must expect a miracle.
You have the power of choice.
Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ.
Welcome to Life Today Live. I'm Randy Robinson. Good to have you here. Today's guest, you're gonna love her. You're gonna love this story. You may have heard of some of the music of today's guest. Her name is Jennifer Shaw, and she has a new album out, and it's right here. It's called Nothing to Fear, and there's some very interesting stories behind the songs, and we'll get into some of those. But it's been like about 6 years or so since her previous album, and before that she was rolling them out. I mean, she was getting hits. The album Someday, Love Broke Through. She had some Billboard hits, top 5 hit with a song called Your Great Name, and so some of you will know her name and her music. Well, where's she been? Let me tell you, she's been a little busy. And you're gonna love her story. In fact, she has a new book, a children's book, called Dumplings Mean Family, and this is a very personal thing for her because Jennifer, oh my goodness, it's a story you have to hear. So welcome. Chat is open. If you haven't followed or liked or subscribed, do those things now. Be a part of the conversation. It's great to have you. Jennifer, thank you for being with us on Life Today Live.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
So just dive into your story, because it's one of those that, you know, I read the little one sheet on it and I'm like, oh my goodness. I think you're both a saint and a little crazy.
I'll go with the crazy part of that a little bit. Very Cliff Notes version of my life. I grew up really excited about music, and super excited about classical music. So I actually went to school for music. I have degrees in piano and voice and actually opera.
Nice.
So I ended up moving back to my hometown, which is Columbus, Ohio, to teach at a university here to teach opera. And I was singing with the Columbus Symphony. And I was I was an opera singer in New York for a while, and then I moved and did that. And I was doing this little church job on the side, right? So this church called me and said, will you be our music director on the side? And I was like, yeah, I got a little time, because I'm always on the go. And so I took that job, and they were like, oh, by the way, we just want you to transition our church from all traditional music to contemporary music. We just need you to start a band. Oh. And I was like, oh yeah, great. Did I tell you I was an opera singer? Like, I'm going to be awful at that. And they're like, no, we prayed about it. I think you're going to start a band. And that's just, I'll make that long story a lot shorter. It ended up me making an album for my dad. My dad got sick, and he had Lou Gehrig's disease. And he loved the worship music I was writing at my church. He wasn't a big opera fan. He loved me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I made him this worship album, and it did well on the radio, which we never anticipated. Nobody wants to hear an opera singer in a band. Obviously, I sing differently in that style when I'm doing that. But that was unexpected and sort of changed the whole direction of my life. And I ended up touring, and we were putting out albums, and then I would tell in my shows, I would tell people the stories behind the songs, like why I wrote them. And that turned into speaking. So now I've been speaking like full-time singer, speaker, songwriter, author person for a long time now. And I've written a book, and I've written, a ton of articles for magazines and stuff. And one of the things that I've done with that as well is I've been a Compassion International artist forever. And we have a child who has, we have 3 biological kiddos, and one of them has very severe special needs as a little guy. And that is a whole different story. That's another half hour if you want to do that one. But what it did for us was, actually, that's what I wrote my book about, which is called Life Not Typical. And it was just about sort of that journey of sort of felt like walking into another reality, where all of a sudden you're part of this community, this disabilities community that you didn't even know existed. And for me and my husband, it really broke our hearts for kids who are in tough spaces. And so we got involved with compassion. We started doing poverty relief for children. We started doing anti-trafficking stuff, family preservation, orphan care, just lots of things that we got really passionate about. And obviously we're deep into disabilities ministry, and happy to say my son has had a completely miraculous outcome. He's amazing and he's fine now, but it was a long road. And so the other thing that did, though, was make us realize that kids who have any kind of special needs, or, they're just kids and they're amazing. And when we were in the field with compassion, we kept meeting orphans. And orphan is a super loaded word. But what I mean by that is sort of the most general definition, which is just kids who don't have parents to care for them permanently. And it was just breaking our hearts. And we realized, especially if you're over about age 3, and especially if you have medical needs, your chance of getting adopted is pretty much nothing. And here we were, really not very afraid of special needs anymore. I mean, we'd already we knew a lot more than we had before about even where to go when you don't know where to go. And so that just started a whole big thing with us, where we were like, we adopted, and many people say, why did you just want a lot of kids? Which I think is hilarious, because if you knew me well, like, it's hilarious that I have this many kids. I was not the girl you called to babysit. Like, I would have a moral imperative to keep your kid alive, but I would not, nobody was having a lot of fun. But now that I have my own, like, I adore them so much. And for us, it wasn't that we wanted more kids. It was that kids need families, and we thought we had room. And so that started the process. And now we have adopted 3 more children from China. So we have 6 altogether, which, I talk to families who have 15 and 18 and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I'm a wimp, I guess. But 6 is good for me.
So 6 is the number. You have 6. And so I'll show people a photo of the family here. And frankly, that looks more like a band than a family, because, right? You got all these kids from lots of different places. And, it's one thing to work for Compassion International, or, some organization that's helping kids where they're at. It's an entirely different thing to go through the process, which is not always easy, and bring a kid back to the States and into a new family, a new setting, a new culture. How have you adapted? And then the medical issues, because tell people some of the issues that your adoptees have.
Yeah, so it started with Noah. Noah's our first adoption. And our 3 kids that are adopted are all from China. And people say to me all the time, how'd you pick China? And I say, I never picked China. I picked Noah. God made it really obvious that Noah was supposed to be our kid. And that's a story, again, I don't have to come to a show and I'll tell you this story. But I don't have time here. But God just made it super clear. And it was such a blessing that he did, because it was really scary. And I think if he hadn't been that clear, I would have said no, because Noah was 9.5 at the time. And I remember seeing his file, because there are files for the waiting kids. And waiting kid is actually a technical term. That's a kid that is paper ready. They are ready to be adopted. They're just waiting for a family. And you're waiting usually for 2 reasons, either your age or your medical status, or both. And so we knew when we went into this that we were going to adopt waiting children, because, that was where our heart was. And I had seen his file, and he looked fabulous and adorable, but he was already 9.5, and he had a very serious heart condition, and I was pretty terrified. And I told the Lord, I think that's too hard for me. And he said, yeah, it is. And it's not too hard for me, and we can do it together. But I remember right before we traveled, a cardiologist called me. We had like a 2-paragraph medical summary of Noah's life. And I had sent it on to our children's hospital just to say, can anyone tell me anything? Because I'm a singer. Like, what do I know about this? And And they called us down to the hospital in person, which at the time I was so dumb. I was like, oh, they're so nice. Like, I'm sure they want to give us all good news in person. But we went down there and he said, I don't think you know what you're getting into. Like, this is really serious. He said if he had been born here and he had had all of his surgeries on time, this would be really serious. And he said, as it is, he's been left. We don't really know why he's alive. And you're bringing him home for hospice. They said it's almost certain that he's not going to be operable. And that was just devastating and terrifying all at the same time. Because I hadn't even met him, but I loved him. God does that for you, which is wonderful. And I know my immediate response, which was so human, was just, well, it's not too late to get out of this, because like who signs up for that kind of heartbreak,
Well, yeah, I mean, basically they're telling you you're going to adopt this child, and he's not going to live very long. That is kind of the message you were getting?
Yeah, that's exactly what they said. Yeah, and I have actually seen other families walk through that very scenario. But thank the Lord for my husband, because he turned to me at that moment and he said, how would we live with ourselves if we left him there now? Like, we knew. And we were like, yeah, we're going. And so we went, and he was blue. I mean, he couldn't walk up 4 stairs. He was, my husband carried him through China. I mean, we were in China for quite a few weeks, 3 or 4 weeks to do his process. And we carried him. And we got him home, and it was a big deal. It was a whole big deal. But I'm sorry. I'll get.
Oh my gosh!
I'll get teary.
Of course.
But
a big deal in what way? The medical issues, or the? I'm curious how he responded to that.
Every way.
Every way.
Every way. I mean, you're standing there. I mean, you're in China, right? You're in a hotel room, and you can hear them coming down the hall. And that's your new kid, and he's 9, and you can't talk to him. And you don't know anything about him except this, like, literally 3 sentences that's like, he likes to read. It's not like anything. His province wouldn't allow anybody. We weren't allowed to talk to him or meet him. We weren't allowed. All we were allowed to do was send him a book of pictures and like a letter about our family, so he would know what we looked like and be less scared. But he wasn't allowed to communicate with us. And then he comes in the door, and it really just hits you. Like, they're like, here's your kid, and good luck. We'll see you in court tomorrow. He's staying with you tonight. I mean, you're like, okay, like it's very weird. And from my perspective, you have so many fears. I'm a weird mix, because I'm a little crazy, as you said, but I also am fearful. Like, I have both. Like, I'll just jump in with both feet, but I also then will be like, wait, what did we just do? And you're thinking, did I just implode my family? Or, but then you're also looking at this kid who's waited 9 years for a family. And honestly, he's a little disappointed, because he's like, man, you don't even speak Chinese. I mean, like, he's like, what am I doing with these white people?
Right.
And he was excited to go to the U.S. because he had heard that the U.S. has the surgery he needed, which we do. And he had been told, if you can get to the U.S., you might be able to get surgery, because they don't even do the surgery he needed in Asia. And so he was excited about that part, but he was also like, he'd never been on a plane. He'd never been on a train. He'd never been, he was like terrified. He was so brave. He's the bravest kid I've ever seen. I mean, he was white knuckling it onto a plane with people he can't talk to go to a whole new world. And I think a lot of people look at it from the parents' perspective, but you think about the kid's perspective.
Right.
And holy cow, like, I get to go home to my house with my family that I know in my culture. And he's just like, but praise God, he was actually still operable, which was not expected. And he's actually doing really well now. He's been with us 5.5 years.
I want to hear about that. I want to show people that maybe jumped in late. This is the album, Nothing to Fear. I think maybe you got a little insight into the title now. And this is the book, Dumplings Mean Family, and I'll let Jennifer explain the title of that. And I also want to show you real quick her website, jennifershaw.com. You can see a lot of things, a lot going on there, because we're not going to be able to cover everything today. But how long ago was that with Noah?
That was 5.5 years ago. Well, I guess, yeah, closer to 6. But we're getting.
Yeah. So what happened? We talking surgery and medically what happened, and then sort of adapting to a new culture, a new family. How did that go? Yeah.
So Noah's brilliant. First of all, people always say, "Well, how long was it till you could communicate?" And he's so smart, and he was really fairly functional in English in about 4 months. He's pretty fluent in about 8 months.
Jeez.
So that, and I have a number of friends who are Chinese, who are good, close friends of mine. They're the kind of people you can call at 2 a.m. and say, "Please tell me why he's crying." And Google Translate, which is 60% accurate. So, helpful, not awesome. But so the adjustment was pretty huge, but he was so ill when we met him. He had to rely on us. I mean, it sounds dumb to be like, that's a part where I see God bringing good out of, it wasn't a good situation, but God brought good out of it, because it became very clear to him really quickly that we did care about him and we were going to stick with him, and that he wasn't, I remember he had to have several surgeries just to see if he was stable enough to have the big surgery that he needed. And after that, we were in the hospital about a month after that one, and he was having complications, and they kind of come in and said to us, this is unpredictable, and you could be here a month, you could be here a year, make plans. And they left the room, and he looked at me, and he'd been with us about 4 months at that point, and he looked at me and he said, "So when do you leave?" And I said, I'm not leaving, I'm your mom. And he said, "No, when do you leave?" And I gonna make myself cry again. That's not nice of you. And I said, "No, I said, we're your parents now. Dad and I are here. We're not leaving." And we would take turns every day. One of us would sleep on the couch and one of us would go home with the other kiddos. And what I saw come out of that was he learned at that moment that we really meant it, that we were his family in a way that I think for a 9-year-old kid, I think it would have taken him years otherwise to learn that. And he is, he came out of that hospital not just different, but he knew his family was his family, and he's just a generous, kind, loving. Here's the story from the hospital. We're 10 days after major open heart surgery, right? And he's doing a puzzle with me, and it was right after that whole "when are you leaving?" And we're like, "We're not leaving." And we're doing a puzzle together, and he looks at me, and his English is still real broken, and he goes, "Mama." And I said, "Yeah, bud." And he said, "There are 6 people in our family." And I said, "That is true." And he goes, "Mama." And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "There are 8 seats in our van." And I said, "Also true, bud." And he said, "Mama." And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "So many kids need families." And I just thought, this is his reality. This is where he grew up. This is what he sees in his orphanage. This is what he knows. And here he's waited 9 years to get a family, and in 4 months in, he's ready to share. And I'm like, that's the kind of kid he is, And so I look at him and I think, yeah, I could have taken care of me, and I could have said no, and I would have missed him. I would have missed him. And that's just unthinkable at this point. So I tell people it's not because we had a minivan, but we did go back, and we we adopted Ethan and Anna came home.
You filled the
a
van.
year later.
You filled the van.
Yeah, we filled the van. And then everyone's like, "So when are you getting the 15 passenger?" And I'm like, no, we're we're at the 8. We're sticking with the 8 passenger.
So you got the two the two that filled the van are from China as well, correct?
Yeah, Ethan and Anna. And and they came home a year after Noah, and they didn't know each other, but we adopted them on the same trip. And they were 8 and 6 when we adopted them.
Now, did they have medical issues not as severe as Noah, or?
Not life-threatening in the same way.
Yeah.
And actually, Anna had something that we were told she had something life-threatening, and then when we got her home, it turned out to be the more minor version of it. So that has been really lovely. She has a number of what we would consider more minor, cleft lip and palate and things like that, but not life-threatening.
Good.
And so that was an excellent mistake in the paperwork for her.
Right.
And Ethan, we were told Ethan had cerebral palsy, and he's fine, completely fine. I don't know what that was about. His paperwork was just wrong. So
Is there a lot of
fine.
misdiagnosis in China, you think?
I think it's more. I think that's super complicated.
Yeah. Okay.
There's Ethan was missed for one, so they didn't do his paperwork. And in China, the culture is just not to adopt. It's getting better for that, but not older kids. And I kind of wonder if somebody knew his only chance was to be adopted internationally, and maybe made his paperwork so he could be.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's complicated.
What does that have to do with dumplings?
Okay, so the actual book. So they came here, and they missed everything. It's total culture shock. When I go do school visits a lot with the book now, and I'm telling the little kids, I'm like, these kids, they were 4th grade, 3rd grade, 1st grade, like your age. So imagine if someone picked you up and said, you're going with this new family to the other side of the world, and everything's different, and there's no pizza. They've never heard of pizza. They've never heard of a grilled cheese. You have all different holidays. Everybody, how scared you'd be. And I remember they asked me for dumplings one day, and dumplings are like the comfort food of China. That's you make it for holidays, but you also just make it anytime. It is, we say, the grilled cheese of China, right? It's just normal food. And they said, can you make dumplings? And I said, oh, I don't know how to do that. And I actually love to cook. I'm a good cook. And so they were shocked. I mean, they were like, what do you mean? And you could tell on their face, they were like, it was even for them. They're like, if she doesn't, is she even going to be a competent mother? Is she going to be able to take care of us if she doesn't know? It's like saying, can you toast me some toast? And going, I don't know how to toast things, So I just saw on their faces, it was more of an issue of, they'd seen on TV their whole lives, these sitcoms of people sitting around for holidays, families. It's a pain to fold all those. And so families will make a big bowl of filling and sit around a table, and everyone will fold their dumplings together. Huh. And they had seen that. And that they thought, when I get a family, I'll make dumplings. Oh, and so you realize all at once, this is more than a food that they miss. It's a whole lot of things. And for us, it was just that realization, there's so many things that you lost. And not that they didn't gain, they gained a lot, but there's so many things they lost, and this is something they don't have to lose, and we can figure it out. And so the children's book is about learning to make dumplings as a family, and how that was just us saying to them, this isn't that you come here and become like us, you come here and do all the changing. This is because you're here, we're different. Because you're here, our family is better. And because you're here, and you're Chinese, our family is also Chinese. Because our family is American, you're also American. We're all of those things, and those things are good things. And so, it was sort of a celebration of loving people who aren't like you, and becoming a family. So that's what we made.
I love it. Now, I do have a couple of quick questions, and I know you've heard these before. There are people who are critical of American families that adopt children from around the world and pull them out of their culture and make them learn English, or what do you make of that? Because, like you said, it's not easy on the child. I mean, from their perspective, it could be very upsetting. Although I think the argument is that they gain more than they lose, but still there's that loss. What's your perspective on that?
One, I agree with them in a lot of situations.
Hmm.
So it was one of the reasons why we only were interested in adopting older and waiting children. Because the truth is, and I would tell people make a lot of really sweeping snap judgments
Right.
about things without recognizing that that is like incredibly complicated, what you just said. Like every country is different. The reason kids are in care is different. Every family is different. And yes, this whole saviorism thing is rough.
Mhm.
And the fact is that if Noah hadn't come here, he wouldn't still be alive.
Yeah.
And he's, and he's 15 and he's doing great. And he has actually a pretty dang good life expectancy now.
Mm.
And so what I'm saying is it's complicated.
Yeah.
So like, we think of ourselves as plan C for our kids.
Hmm.
Would it have been better for them to stay with their birth family? 100%. Will I work for family preservation all day long? 100%. That would have been better and preferable. Would it have been better if they could have been adopted in their home culture and not had all this? I think, yeah, 100%.
Hmm.
My kids didn't have that option. We were their last chance.
Yeah.
China only keeps kids in care till age 14. So my 15-year-old, if he was still alive, he would be on his own now.
Mm.
It's complicated.
Yeah.
And so for my kids, I feel pretty confident, very confident that they're in a better place than a good place. But those people have a good point. Like I'm not,
Yeah.
and I was pretty naive going into this. And I will say a lot of people are. So definitely do your homework and look at the country you're adopting from and look at why the kids are there and what the policies are. And, it's super complicated.
No, and I appreciate that. Last question. How did your biological children do? How are they doing with that? Because it doesn't, that's a little invasive, and it's a culture shock for them to have Chinese kids living in their home now and calling you guys mom and dad. How's it been with them?
I'm so proud of them.
Hmm.
Actually, we went to them after that cardiologist and we were like, we need you to understand what just happened. And we need to talk as a family and see what you think about this. Because this means I'm going to be living at the hospital. And this means like, we're going back into, and I was the one going, are we all sure? Are we all sure? And they're looking at me like, what is wrong with you? Let's go get him. They literally like, let's go get him. Let's go get him. And I'm not going to say this has been easy. The first year especially, that all three were home was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I know that my biological kids have lost attention and time and all those things. At the same time, they've gained a ton.
Mm-hmm.
And my kids are just my kids now. Nobody's sitting here going, I'm bio, I'm adopted. They are siblings. And I've just watched them become knit together and they're a family. And that does not always happen. So I'm also not going to tell you that always happens, but I'm so proud of my kids, all of them, and the decisions that they've made to bridge gaps and reach toward each other and create a family and laugh together. And I had something to do with some of that, and they had a lot to do with that. Those were a lot of their own choices.
Yeah, no, I love it. Actually, I get it because I'm adopted, and I have had two sisters who were not adopted. I was in the middle, and I get it. And what you have done, I think, is a beautiful thing. And man, what's last? One more question. I said I had a last question, but I got another last question. What do you tell people who feel like maybe they're supposed to do what you've done to some level of degree? Where do they even start?
Oh, wow. Where they start is finding as much information as they possibly can about where they think they're maybe called to go. There's 100 directions you could go, and finding an ethical agency. I would just warn people, there's a lot of issues in the world of adoption, and it's very hard you can't know everything, but go find out what you can know and make sure that the kids that you're looking at, I think it has to be child-centric. This has to be about you're not adopting for you. And people should not fool themselves that you need to adopt. Like we we adopt not because we want children, but because children need families. Like that needs to be how you're looking at it. And yeah, I mean, we have, my website is jennifershaw.com, but we also have a website, dumplingsmeanfamily.com, for the book. And there is a connection there to one of the agencies that we work with who is fantastic. And I would love people, they can start there. Even if that agency doesn't go to the country they're interested in or can't help them, they would certainly point them in the right direction. And they have a fantastic reputation. That's Madison Adoption Associates. And they can talk to anyone in the U.S. So that's not, you don't have to like be near them. Also, there's ways people can sponsor a kid at our website through Compassion, and there's lots of ways to get involved there.
Yeah.
But yeah, and people are always welcome. I mean, honestly, welcome to email us. It's info@jennifershaw.com, and we will definitely try to answer questions we get as much as we possibly can.
What was that URL for the book?
It's dumplingsmeanfamily.com.
Okay, just like the book title. Let me find that and I'll show people. But Jennifer, thank you. I appreciate you sharing your story. And now that you're out hitting the road doing a book tour, doing a little singing, and what do you tote these kids just around to all these things?
Well, they're old. My youngest is now turned 11 last week. So I have the most amazing husband. People ask me that. I do have just an incredible partner in our crazy. And so yeah, sometimes they come, sometimes they stay, but I try not to ever be gone more than a couple days. Yeah. I don't do giant tours. I do a lot of going out for weekends because I like to come home and I like to be with them.
Nice. Well, thanks again. Appreciate you sharing your story, and just God bless you and your family and all that you're doing. It's wonderful, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you guys watching. This is the website she was referring to, dumplingsmeanfamily.com. If you want to start down that road, do your research, get hooked up with an ethical adoption agency. It's a beautiful thing, but make sure you're doing it for the right reasons and God's called you to it. And if you just want to do the I say easy thing, easier than adopting, pick up the album, Nothing to Fear. Pick up the book, Dumplings Mean Family. Lots of great things from Jennifer. And check out our website, jennifershaw.com. And come back. We've got more great interviews for you next time here on Life Today Live.
We float on the vast, limitless sea of divine mercy.